be here for the next 7. Ooh, they're recording. Got it.
Yeah, we like to record these sessions because if you miss it, then we can share the notes later.
I give permission for this to be recorded. I'm Tony Drockton, and I'm the founder. They call me the chief cheerleader of Hammett. How did we get here? Well, Hammett was started 13 years ago right here in Hermosa Beach, California with Stephanie Hammett. And I jumped right in like a quick start entrepreneur in a partnership. Within a year, I was running it alone and had to figure this industry out. And it was a real blessing because I got to dive in and understand the nuances of fashion. My background is as an entrepreneur was in everything but the luxury space. It was commoditized, finance, roofing, digital advertising. So I know you're asking yourself, why are you here today talking to the founder of a luxury handbag brand and what am I going to bring you? I'm hoping I'm going to bring you some of that experience as a person from the outside, entering into an industry that I did not have direct experience or even indirect experience in. And how did we get to be where we are 13 years later? And where are we? Well, we're positioned as a luxury handbag brand, American. We're carried in over 850 specialty department store, resort doors, including the Montage, the Four Seasons, all the way to the only 2 family-owned and run department stores, Von Maur and Dillard's. And we grew 679% online in the last 3 years, 150% overall in the last 3 years. We've been added 200 specialty doors during the pandemic and another 100 this year. So that's today. But let's go backward to the beginning, because I think that's what today is all about. We got here through some scrappy financing. And I'm hoping that there's a breadth of people on here, from the Allens, who I saw joining us early, that have been in this industry a long time, have an established brand and business, all the way to somebody that's like, hey, I just jumped in. How am I going to make it in fashion? We'll have time for questions around other things besides financing. But what I'd love to do is jump in and tell you my personal story, ending with, or even in the middle of what we're doing now, which we're doing what's called a Regulation A capital raise. We're actually selling stock, pre-IPO stock, online directly to our fans, and also creating new relationships with other retail investors at the same time. But that's the cliffhanger. I'm going to go backwards. I had to make a list, by the way, of all the different financing we did to survive these 13 years. And I broke it down into 6 categories: personal, government, revenue-based, loans in general, traditional investments through the investment community, and then crowdfunding. I'm going to jump through the first quickly, and we're going to get to the meat of it. But you have follow-up questions, I welcome them, or throw them in the chat. When you think about personal financing, when we started, I had my own savings, which you're going to use to launch your business. But then also I had to borrow from friends and family. I used credit card debt. I also took out home equity, eventually had to sell my home, and I tapped my entire retirement savings. And that was just in the first couple of years in this industry. And the friends and family borrowing was a combination of high interest debt or convertible notes. Most recently, I was able to tap into PPP and what's called the ERC, Employment Retention Credit. And I don't want you to forget about government finance. And even though I'm not going to cover that, we applied for SBA loans along the way. We applied for the environmental disaster loan recently. We've applied for grants. These are all areas where we either received money recently with what's happened, or we were turned down earlier because we didn't qualify. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't look to government money. It's super important. We've all paid our taxes, and you deserve it, especially if you're an entrepreneur creating jobs. So this third area that really helped us once we got going in year 2 or 3 is revenue-based financing. Again, I'll spend a little more time here. If you have revenue in your company, you can finance against that. So the early days, well before it was known, we could get credit card advances, cash basically against credit card charges from different lenders. It's become more mainstream, algorithmic, but back then it was really new and edgy. I can tell you the interest rates at the time were between 45% and 120% per year, but it was able to give me the cash to keep going. So the first loan was maybe 20 grand, and then we used it and we built up some revenue stream. The next one was 40 grand. I remember taking $120,000 loans for 6 months with a repayment of around 180 6 months later. But again, it was the cash we needed to keep going. Eventually, we were charging a lot of cards through PayPal, and we moved on to Shopify. And now both of them have their own lending. There's Shopify lending and there's PayPal lending. So if you're on that platform or you're using PayPal, or if you're using American Express, really any credit card, they will lend you money against an algorithmic analysis of how much you're charging every month. And that'll allow you again to survive. And the interest rates have come way down because of the competition. They're no longer 100% or 40%. If you've got an overall good cash flow and it's consistent, it's in the teens. So it's not a bad way to go and look. There's also a newer credit card type of business out there. The one that we found was Brex, B-R-E-X. This is a couple of years ago, but now they've become more mainstream. What Brex does is they tap into your tech stack. We have a pretty well-developed tech stack, all in the cloud. We launched on NetSuite 13 years ago. We added New Order in the middle, went to Shopify 2014. And because everything's in the cloud, Brex came along and said, if you give us access to your data, we can analyze your risk better, and we'll be able to give you a credit line much larger than anyone else. And a year before the pandemic, Brex came along and they really saved us. They gave us a $1 million credit line with no personal guarantee based on the cash flow of our business. And let me tell you, when the pandemic hit, it really saved us, because I thought, whoa, they're going to not do very well. People wouldn't be able to pay them back. We're going to struggle. I was worried the line would go away. They were the only ones not only hold my line, but to continue today and keep going versus some other asset-based lenders. Karen.
May I ask you a little more about that? What exactly do they look at? Is it your individual customers, repeat customers, your retail customers? What are they looking at?
Well, they're basically looking at your cash flow. And for us, that cash flow is multifaceted. We have our own retail stores. We are carried, and I mentioned the 800 plus wholesale accounts in department stores. We also have a very strong online business on Hammett.com. So they'll take a look at all of the cash flow coming from those businesses. They'll do a forward analysis of what's the probability of it continuing. Then they'll loan you money against that continuation of the flow, charge you an interest rate, but again, much more reasonable, because they're able to see backwards into your exact systems, and it gives them a really tight algorithmic analysis of what's going to happen going forward. I mean, if you think about it, the old day was you filled out an Excel spreadsheet, you send it over to your asset-based lender. You might even still be doing this now. And there's a lot of trust. There is no trust when you allow them to tap into your systems. And they've done so well in the last 3 years that I think they're the fastest growing non-American Express credit card out there, because they're able to analyze risk much deeper. So again, pro tip, if you're not on a Shopify or if you're not using a back-end ERP, I would definitely consider it, because it's going to give you a much better risk profile to any lender that's looking at you. It's really helped us get through the toughest times, because it's non-debatable data. It happened in the past, it's recorded in real time, and they're able to pull that data out themselves and put it into their own analysis to figure out how much to lend you. Does that answer your question, Karen?
Yeah, much more clear. Thank you.
Yep. And then there's even new competitors. There's one called Pipe, P-I-P-E, a ton of them. There's an older lender called Circle Up. We applied with them. We got turned down. They've been around forever too. They now are kind of become more like a Brex. These are all places that you should look if you're currently looking for cash or to get advances on any revenue you're currently generating. If you're not currently generating revenue, then save these in your back pocket when you start to. So I want to talk a little bit about general loans or just lenders. So we work with Merchant Financial. They were very good to us, and they're an asset-based lender, they call it. They're much more traditional. They work very well if you sell wholesale. If you're selling to some of the great retail partners that we're in, you're going to get an order from them. You're going to be able to make it, and then you're going to be able to ship it. And then if you give terms, you're going to have to wait to get paid. Ideally, they would pay you 100% upfront. You would make it and ship it, but that's not the world we're in today. I would urge you to try to get deposits if you're a small brand, because that helps your cash flow. But once you have those written forward orders, especially from a dependable like Von Maur or a Dillard's, you can then go to your asset-based lender and you can borrow money. You can borrow money from purchase order financing, meaning on orders that have already been placed. You can borrow money against any finished goods or inventory you have in your warehouse or on the boat on the way here. You can borrow money against your receivables. So remember, you've shipped it, you haven't been paid. So those are 3 areas that you'll be able to get advances on at reasonable rates from a traditional asset-based lender like a Rosenthal or a Merchant Financial or some of the others. And then, of course, if you've got IP, so if you're a technology company, if you've got something that's worthwhile that you've protected, that you've registered, okay, your intellectual property is an asset. They will lend you money against that also. And then lastly, if you own a building, you can borrow against that real estate, or you can put that up to increase your leverage. So I would definitely look to Merchant or to Rosenthal in the traditional area. But this was where we found another asset-based lender that really blew me away. It's called Assembled Brands. And again, if you have a built-out tech stack, if you've been doing things with where you've been gathering data, Assembled is for you. They focus mostly on D2C brands because D2C brands naturally work in the cloud. They naturally capture their data in real time as they make sales. So what Assembled Brands is, they take a look at all of that data, sort of like a Shopify did or a Brex, but they also will loan you money against your inventory, against finished goods on the water, really anything. They take a look at the whole picture. I was able to move from traditional asset-based lenders, Merchant was ours, and they're great, by the way, to Assembled. And we were able to double the amount of capital we could get based on the same asset base, double. We're talking an extra couple of $1 million of lending against the same receivables, the same inventory, and the same purchase orders. So that was a huge win for us. And we put that together during the pandemic. That was in 2020. So Assembled Brands, again, if you're in rapid growth, if you're direct consumer, if you have the data, I would highly recommend talking with them. Now, before I go into the crowdfunding, one of the ones I have to discuss, if you're established and you're looking for the more traditional venture capital or private equity, we also went that route. We started looking, and really, I've been looking since we started. So lots of meetings, a lot of come back later, Tony. You need to be this much. I'm sure, who hasn't heard, you know what, all you need to do is this, and then we'll give you lots of money. And you're like, well, if I can do this, then I wouldn't come back to you. I'd already have the money. but I learned a lot from the meetings, and I said to myself, one day we're going to be able to get some traditional VC or private equity money. We hit the jackpot in 2018 with a small firm in Utah that lended money directly to small D2C brands. We were a little bit of a hybrid because we've always maintained, I think, very healthy relationships with our specialty stores and with our department stores. And later, if we have time, I'll talk about the business model that really allows that to happen. But because we had both strong wholesale cash flow and a rapidly growing D2C business, we were able to get a couple of $1 million of equity lending from a small firm in Utah at the end of 2018, call it private equity. We basically sold them stock and they gave us money. And it's based on a valuation. So this is the first time somebody gave us a true, this is how much your company is worth. And then this is how much we'll be able to give you against that value. And we're going to own this much percentage of stock in perpetuity. That's a really big consideration for anybody on this Zoom. Don't go there early. If possible, avoid that until you have to, because when you think about it, when you give away a percentage of your company forever, that value hopefully will rise and rise. You never get that back. So you have to look at the increase in value as the cost of getting that cash, not just the percentage of equity you're giving up. So I've way too often seen too many people give up equity early on where they could have looked at some of these other areas, personal, revenue-based loans. And I highly recommend them. Even though the interest rates could be higher in your mind, there is nothing higher than giving up equity. Okay. There is no interest rate on it. You lose your percentage of your company forever. Is that a bad thing? No, it can be great. But you want to make sure, if possible, you do it when you can still be, number one, in control. And number two, when you can set terms that are very reasonable so that you can continue running the company the way that you want to. This is a really strong point that I could probably go on forever, but you'll just, I'll go into a couple of things. Number one, I've insisted to maintain both voting control of my board and equity control of the company as an individual. So when we met with different people along the path that wanted to give us money, some a lot, and they were like, we want to take control. So we want 50.1. Don't worry, it's just 50.1. We just have to have control because, you know, that's just how we loan money. I would recommend to you, don't. I would say this to anyone, and I would say it almost forever. The fashion industry is littered with stories of people that gave up control with all great intentions. But guess what? I'll say it on Zoom. Shit happens. Okay. We just went through shit, COVID. Okay. Let me explain what would have happened to Hammett if I didn't have control, because I have plenty of friends that have different businesses where they've got a board that controls what you do. Right when COVID hit, they were told to burn the boats. They were told to lay everybody off. They were told to conserve cash and preserve the company. But what was really happening is the investors that put money in were like, save my investment. It's not about anything else but that. And that's okay. That's what they do. They invest money and they have to save their investment. Now, they're not all that way. There are some really good long-term investment companies, but you have to earn their money. The Berkshire Hathaways, the Atlantic Generals. These are the companies that I will take a majority from at some point because they've proven over time that they do not want to shut the company down at bad times, that they're in for the long haul. So look at a brand like Kendra Scott. I mean, she took good money and she's killing it. So that's where I want to go. I didn't mean to go on a tangent, but it's really important for you to understand control in fashion is everything if you're a visionary, if you're doing it differently, if you're trying to maintain brand integrity over anything. So when the pandemic hit, because I had voting control, I went to the private equity investor and I said, I don't want to lay anybody off. We're going to look for the opportunities, not the problems. We're going to double down on our ad spend. And we're going to really focus on where we can get revenue, not on the areas where we cannot. I was able to work with Dillard's and Bon Mar, and I said, listen, I need you to keep taking your orders and also confirm going forward. Otherwise, I can't make them. They did. So my biggest major supported me. The private equity firm did support me, and we were able to keep all our people, took a pay cut of around 70% at the top and 40% for the top 8 middle, people. And 90 days later, we were able to restore that because we were already back on track and cash flow was positive. So all that story wraps into control. I was able to make fast decisions because I didn't need approval from anyone else on what we were going to do. So in any type of creative financing, in any documents you sign, be cognizant of that control feature. Even when you take money from a private equity or from venture capital, there's triggers within the document that could really, really hold you back. For example, you can't hire anybody over a certain amount of pay. You have to, we have the ability to fire the CEO or the founder. These are little lines that are in there. So be careful and make sure you read it all. And at least you know what you're going into. So I can tell you at Hammett, we are continuing to do it differently. We are a non-promotional brand. We follow MAP pricing, minimum advertised pricing. We give up a lot of top line revenue at the discount channels because we don't sell to any, because we're really playing the long game, the 100-year plan of the luxury fashion houses of Europe. And because of that, that's why we're able to get those growth numbers in the past years. It's also how we're able to continue to raise capital because our margins are stellar. Well, we're going to go into crowdfunding, so everything is online about my company. And I can just tell you, our blended margins right now are above 65%. And that includes our wholesale sales, our direct consumer sales, and their own stores. And in the fashion industry, I think most people know, you can look at public companies like Coach and Michael Kors, and they're in the same range. So that's where you need to be for people to really invest into you the long term. So we covered the traditional investments of venture capital and private equity. One thing I didn't go into is if you're a startup, hear me on this. If you're a startup, it's way easier to get money. Don't wait. The story sells better than the numbers. It's something nobody taught me. So if you're really in the early stages and you've got a great story, don't be afraid to start talking to angel investors and seed investors. They will not take control. They'll give you a small check because they're betting on you and they're betting on your story. And there's no time to start than early on. And I highly recommend that. You'll learn a lot. And again, especially if you have a great product and a great story. Okay, let's go into Karen. How we doing?
You're doing great. You know, Tony, I feel like we'd be remiss not to talk about your early days a little bit before we get into where you are now. And, you know, for the team that's watching, because I can see we have a lot of small companies.
Right.
Tony's been on a very determined path to get to the successful spot he is today. We've had the privilege of watching over the years. And, you know, never knowing the turmoil that goes behind it. But what you did early on a personal, you made some personal sacrifices, and your team did too, to lay a foundation to be where you are today.
I think Karen's referring to, you know, when I launched into 2008, again, it was me and Stephanie. We were going to build this amazing luxury brand. But it just so happened 2 months later, the Great Recession started. Unfortunately, nobody sent me that memo till about a year and a half later. So, you know, I was all in. 2008, 2009, had my own cash, was married, son was living with me. And within 2 years, I was in the middle of my divorce. My son had to move in with his mom. I had to short sale my own home for capital, and I was couch surfing. And it literally that quick it happened because this industry requires a lot more capital than I thought going in. But you know what? Don't feel so bad because I was like just sleeping in my Range Rover, which was a hilarious joke about it all, and riding my skateboard back in work when it broke down. But those personal sacrifices sound like, oh my gosh, who would do that? In the end, you kind of have to lose all those comforts. The home that I was in, I had built, I designed. It was my baby. Oh my gosh, this is my home. I wanted it forever. That Range Rover, I paid cash for it when I was doing well 6 years later. But when I gave up those material goods, and I was staying with close friends, couch surfing, I kind of found myself. I really realized, like, yeah, not only do I love fashion and I love this industry, but I really didn't need all of those physical items to feel good about myself. And it really started setting me on another path. I found a personal coach in Ken Deemer who helped me really grow as an individual. I was able to have Andrew Forbes. He's now currently our CEO, but he was one of my first mentors. We would meet for lunch. Karen and I would talk. So many people, Joan Shep from Philadelphia, fashion icon. So I had access to a lot of people in the industry that helped guide me. And I wouldn't change anything. Well, I might change all the money I spent prior to getting in the industry, so I had more starting, but you can't change that, can you? And, you know, everyone has their story. For me, that story's real, and it also was super impactful, not because I had to couch surf, but because when the money was coming in the previous businesses, I didn't respect it. I thought it would keep falling off trees. And I didn't have to look to all these financing sources for my previous businesses. The roofing business started right away. It was raining, there was earthquakes, fires in LA. All of a sudden I had 7 offices, 100+ employees, and I had to lay on a private boat and a Ferrari. And I always paid at the bar for my friends. So when I got into the digital advertising space, it was very similar. When I jumped into the real estate business, it was 2000, right before the real estate boom. So 2000 to 2006, everybody's making money. I didn't learn a lot from those successes. I learned most when things got tough, and that you read that until it happens to you, it's true. And so this industry taught me some valuable lessons around respect for myself, for my finances, for money, and also really taught me that I wanted to build it differently. I wanted it to be around for the long haul, hopefully well beyond my lifetime. And the only way to do that is to really focus on what do those fashion houses in Europe do differently than America? And the main thing they do is they hold brand above anything else. It's the most important. Short-term wins are not important if they're going to degrade the long-term value of their brand. And that's how I built Hammett for the last 13 years. And back to financing, it's how I chose a lot of the financing. I wanted to pay high interest rates so I could maintain control. So, and that was important to me. We do well on that, Karen?
You're doing great.
Question?
And well, any questions, I should just mention, put them into the chat. You can put them in the comments. You can raise your hand and ask. We're going to get to all of your questions. Tony, thank you for sharing, because I know that, it's easier to talk about the fun stuff, but the foundation that you built and the spirit that you kept, I believe is what has propelled you to where you are now. And we're proud of you. I'm super proud of what's happening. And so now this is cool. Tell us about going public.
Okay, great. So this is really exciting part, everybody. It's so exciting. I'm going to run around. So,
we can jump. I'll jump too.
Jump.
All right.
So I found this type of financing over 5 years ago, and I was so excited about it. And it's called crowdfunding. But back then, either we didn't have the time, the business wasn't in the right place, or it didn't fit for Hammett. But last year we made the decision to go all in, and I'll come back to that. First of all, what is crowdfunding? Well, let's think about this. You ever heard of Kickstarter or Indiegogo? I think in the fashion and the technology industry, those are two kind of stalwarts in the original crowdfunding. Now, I call those product-based crowdfunding, meaning you design a product, you show that product on one of those websites, these platforms. People are willing to pay for the product up front. So they'll go ahead and they'll pay you for it. Then after you get all that money in, you go and you make the product, you deliver it at a later date. I wanted to walk you through that slowly, because if you think about all these examples of cash and cash flow, what a great cash flow business model. All you have to do is design it, and people will pay you 100% for it. Then you can make only what you need and you ship them. It's why the Kickstarters of the world and the Indiegogos did so well. And they created this crowdfunding cycle that allowed people to trust relationships with new brands and new product designers. And it's still going today. Matter, I looked on Kickstarter last night just for fun. There are multiple brands on there right now that have at least $3 million, $2 million of people that have committed to products. One is a little kitty litter cleaner. The cat goes in and it cleans it out. I'm like, $3 million. I'm like, I could have thought of that one. So I would definitely recommend looking at Kickstarter and GoGo for inspiration around what raises money. Take a look at what people are investing in. Okay, you don't have to design a product to copy it, but look at the nuances of how they talk about the product, of what they're doing differently, because this is what raises that capital. So that's the early, what I call the early crowdfunding, okay, product-based. Now you have this company-based crowdfunding renaissance that's been happening since Obama passed the Jobs Act in 2014. Part of the Jobs Act was the ability for all investors, not just what's called a qualified investor, to invest in any type of company as long as they fit and satisfy some of the criteria. So there's two types of crowdfunding laws that were passed. One is called Regulation CF, Regulation Crowdfunding, and then the other is Regulation A+. The delineation of the two is fairly simple. With Regulation Crowdfunding, you're able to raise up to $5 million direct from your fans and from people that don't even know you on the internet, on your phone. With Regulation A+, you can actually raise up to 75 million from those same fans and people.
What was that number?
75 million.
$75 million. Okay.
So now the criteria to do a regulation CF is much lower. To go to a regulation A+, you really need to have everything really buttoned up. So a regulation A+ is just below filing really to do a legitimate IPO. You need audited financial statements for multiple years. You have a full SEC filing, an S1 is, to get it completed, it's going to run you a significant amount of change, up to 100, maybe 150 grand minimum if you're to do it cheap. To do a reg CF, you could probably get out of the ground for $20,000 to $25,000 total. You do not need audited financial statements, and you can be up and running quickly. For most people on the Zoom, I'm assuming a 5 million raise would be very helpful. So let's focus in on that. Hammett, we're in hyper growth. We're actually doing a regulation A+. I'll jump back and forth, but I'm going to start with the CF, and you'll see why we chose to go for the bigger route. For a reg CF, if you're a startup, if you're brand new, you can literally, all you have to do is put together your business proposal, satisfy some SEC requirements, no audits, no financial statements because you don't have any revenue. You submit it, you can get approved, and then you can raise money. It's pretty fast. Like it could be 6 weeks, 2 months. Where can you raise that money? Well, there's these platforms out there similar to the Kickstarter, except these are just for raising capital. If you haven't heard of them, you want to write them down. I'll say them slow. These are important for you to, again, go to school on what people are doing out there. Okay, so I would say first start with Start Engine, StartEngine.com. And then I would probably go to Republic, REPUBLIC.io, and then maybe WeFunder, WEFUNDER. These 3 platforms all have different focuses, but they all help smaller, and some of them, Republic and Start Engine, they do Reg A+, larger companies raise money. Think of them as an Amazon for products, okay? Every company lists on these platforms that wants to. They tell their story. There's links to click through to their S1s if they're Reg A+, to their financials if they have revenue, to anything you need to see. And then literally you can click a couple more buttons, either ACHS or attach your credit card, or you can even mail in a check or scan it, and you will own stock in these companies in a matter of minutes. Okay, it's pretty cool. Again, let's go back to Kickstarter, how cool that was when it started. Let's even go back to the old, timers that when there was no Amazon, when there was no selling online. I think this is 1999 internet for financing. It is exploding the opportunities for you and I to find people that believe in us, that trust us, that want to give us cash because they like your story, they like your company, they want you to be successful. These are those true long-term investors that I told you want to look for, those special private equity or venture capital firms that are really in for the long haul. That's what crowdfunding is really about. These are not get-rich-quick schemes, people. You may hear that, it's just not true. They're buying stock in you for the long haul. They're investing in you. And I like to say, when a person gives you money, they become a fan investor. So they're literally a fan and an investor, and it supercharges them. The data for the early investors in some of these companies is clear. They have a higher open rate on the emails. They have a higher AOV, average order value, online directly. They have higher engagement with the brand. They, again, become super fans. So, and what's really cool about Reg CF is you get to not only choose the term, you also get to choose your minimum investment amount, how much you want to raise minimally or to the max, so you don't have to raise 5 million. There's restaurants I've seen in Chicago that they're 50,000. That's all they want to raise. And they're able to pull it off to start their own small restaurant. The best part about these platforms, though, for me, is I get to go to town on everyone else's business models. Okay, think about this. When I started, I had to find ways to find money. I had to discover by reading articles. Even Reg A and Reg CF, there are still very few central places for you to get the whole story. It's sort of all over the place, just like the internet in 99. Okay. I mean, before there were depositories of information, before even Google, you were jumping around trying to figure out what's this internet thing? You know, what can I do on it? Where's the information I need? Well, nowadays we take for granted that we can just search on our phone and anything pops up. That's where we are with these Reg A and Reg CFs right now. It's a disparate bunch of information, but nothing short of, I think, the best opportunity for brands to not only connect directly with their fans, but to raise a significant amount of capital to continue in business and be successful. So Reg A Plus, which is why we chose to do it, was important to me for a few reasons. We're a hyper-growth brand. We're very established. Our network of wholesale partnerships, our 2 of our own stores with the 3rd one opening in the next quarter, our very strong presence online, our 200,000 existing customers that have bought from us, plus another 200+ thousand that have bought from our partners. We have almost 200,000 emails, 120,000 Instagram followers. You see where I'm going. We have this network that we can tap into. If you don't have all of that, then you definitely want to look just to Reg CF, because a Reg A Plus requires that sort of presence for it to really be successful. And then on top of all that, Karen asked me about a television series, which we're launching. It's called Going Public, and you can just look at goingpublic.com. We chose to be part of this first ever groundbreaking series because if you think about it, who here's watched Shark Tank? And when you see the idea, you're like, oh my gosh, either I thought of that, but I didn't get on Shark Tank, or I would invest in that. That's fantastic. Well, if you think about goingpublic.com, that's exactly what this is. It's basically Shark Tank, except the entire world will be watching this series, which airs October 19th for 10 weeks. Once a week, they'll drop a new edition, and it's about 3 hyper-growth brands: Hammett, a company called Proven, which is an AI cosmetic brand, and a Spotify music competitor called Treble. And the 3 of us are telling our brand stories, our journey to raising capital. You get a lot of behind the scenes information from both the founders and their team. And as people are watching every week, they can literally just click to invest into those 3 companies. And if you feel like you qualify to be on this show, this is a plug. They are auditioning for season 2 and for season 3 right now. And do not count yourself out. They're looking for high quality individuals, great stories. It's not necessarily, you don't need to be 100 million. You can be less than 10 in revenue, but you have to have something that's going to be compelling for investors to invest, because the alignment of the show is very clear. This is not a competition. We're not competing with Treble or with Proven for the cash. They want all 3 of us to become successful. So we originally went into the Reg A not knowing about this Going Public show last year. And we said, we think we can raise 10 million bucks pretty easily. And we chose to do a Reg A Plus over a Reg CF, not because of the 10 million, but because we felt it put us on a higher plane. When people were looking at our offering, they could see that we had fully audited financials. They could see that we have a 248-page offering circular. They could see that the SEC fully approved us with our S1. So it's a much higher level of approval. And so we really felt we'd not only get our investment from our fans that know us, but we would get people that don't know Hammett and discover us, and then see all of the information and everything we've done and invest. When we layered on top being part of this Going Public series, we raised our maximum investment to 25 million. That's how strong we feel about this series. So it airs on entrepreneur.com, starts October 19th for 10 weeks. And again, if you're considering raising capital through crowdfunding of any sorts, I highly recommend you watch this first ever series. Of course, I'll have Crazy Tony on there having fun. I wear a tutu, I dance. No tutu, but I wanted to. They wouldn't let me. If you know me, we have a lot of fun with costumes at the trade shows, and we've definitely over the 13 years we've proven even though we're a luxury brand, we just don't take ourselves that serious most of the time because this industry is tough enough to not have some fun, right? So back to the crowdfunding and back to going public, I would highly recommend, even if you're not currently looking for capital, you start to invest just a little bit of time to learn about it because it's growing so fast that it's just here to stay and it's still relatively unknown. So by you joining the Zoom and watching it, you're learning about something that even I have asked professionals, private equity investors, venture capitalists, hey, have you heard of Regulation A? They're like, nope. Heard of Reg? Yeah, no, what is that? And then they're always blown away when I mention the Going Public series because they're like, that's illegal. You can't raise money on a television series. I'm like, well, you can if you stream it. And they're like, no. I'm like, yeah, you can. If you stream it, you can click the link, which shows the offering circular. You've satisfied all the laws. And then you can click another link and you can own stock in 3 minutes. And they're just like, because they're used to 8 months of due diligence, paperwork back and forth, contracts here and there. There's so much friction in that space, private equity and venture capital. And they, in some way like that, they also do love the fact, and again, I love private equity. They did good by us. They love the fact that it's a closed system. It's only been for qualified investors. And so I don't know about you, but I wasn't a qualified investor while I owned Hammett. I mean, in the middle of Hammett, I wouldn't have qualified. I couldn't invest in startups. I couldn't invest in the Beyond Meats. Couldn't invest in the Ubers and Lyfts because you didn't qualify. With Reg A or even with Reg CF, you can own a space exploration company, the next biotech company, an AI-driven algorithm that's going to save the world. They're all on these platforms. As a matter of fact, there's over 85 platforms right now and growing that allow you to put your offering on and raise money. There's some so specialized. One's just about space exploration. Another one's about biotech. So no matter what your business idea, I know this is Accessory Council and we're fashion, but we all have a close group of friends. And I bet a bunch of us have friends that are entrepreneurs in other industries. Do not keep this a secret. This is a real path to success for small and medium-sized companies. Matter of fact, they updated the laws for Regulation A+ in March. Watch this. Now public companies can actually do a Reg A. So companies can already be public and they're going to go to this process and raise money directly from their customers. Why would they do that? Marketing. And companies are already doing this. Matter of fact, I think the company Issuance that we're raising money with them right now, Julian I saw joined earlier, they already have multiple inquiries from public companies that want to use Reg A to raise 75 million bucks and have a direct relationship with their fans because they can't do it when they're public in a different way. So I can go all over the place, but I hope you're excited about this. Yeah.
Tony, may I be bold and show your screen where, like, so what it looks like for someone to invest? And so if I want to invest, so there's a minimum of $550 and that's it.
Yeah. If you scroll down, can you scroll it? So there's our numbers. So this is our story right here. 22 billion handbag market. Our growth rates. We've only raised 3.5 million in our lifetime. We've done we'll do 30 million this year, 90 million lifetime revenue. For every dollar that we spend, we get $4 back. There's our margins we talked about. Okay. And then if you keep scrolling, it's our story. This is a fun video of me like James Bond running around the rooftop. Why? Because I like to be different. Here's the secrets of our margins, right? Multi-channel growth, efficient use of capital, non-promotional pricing, integrity on all fronts. And we mean that. If you're shipping wholesale product and you're expecting them to sell it at one price, and then you're on your website discounting it, I'm calling you out right now. You don't have integrity on all fronts. And if you think everybody's doing it, I can promise you that everybody's that are doing it, it's a race to the bottom. If you want to be in integrity, you got to give those partnerships a chance to sell it at the same price as you. And that's important to me. And that's why we have 800 partners. We are really a fashion and function brand. So you combine fashion and functionality, that's a Hammett. We like to say we're the most functional luxury hand brand out there, and we are. I mean, from external cell phone pockets to adjustable straps, to everything being in the right place, the softest, most luxurious leather. And then because of our lifetime guarantee, we call it the lifetime promise, even our hardware is jewelry grade. We will replace it or repair the hardware or the entire handbag if it prematurely wears and they're not happy with it. So that's intentional design. So, and then this goes on and on and on. I mean, there's plenty more pages here, but there's everything for someone to see. So they can really understand our brand. Now, there's a button on there.
Sorry to put you on the spot there, but I had to show because it's, it's just super cool. I must wonder, with all the young men, investing in things like Robinhood and GameStop and, the AMCs, this is a fun way for women and, those who love fashion to support their favorite brands.
It's funny because we haven't gone wide. As a matter of fact, we've yet to send an email, an SMS. We haven't tapped our social networks. We just put the offering up. We're kind of building towards the show. But of the, couple 100,000 we've gotten in already, from just people that have heard word of mouth, the majority have been women, Karen, which is awesome. Because before we went into this, one of the concerns was 70 to 75% of Reg A and Reg CF investors are men. And we're like, oh, wow, what will they see in a handbag line? But I think the reality of it is that a lot of the offerings are mostly focused on men. Because let's face it, finance is still, I think, 94% men in the industry. Founders, the numbers, so we have a product and a brand that women can sink their teeth into and get excited about. And I think that's why we're getting them from the investment community right now, but I think it's going to explode when we communicate with them directly. It's exciting.
Yeah. So speaking of the investment community, I believe that we have to show
oh yeah, whenever you do a Reg A,
explain, like, why is this important? What are we looking at?
Whenever one of the criteria from the SEC, when you offer stock digitally, whether it's through social networks, whether it's on our own website, you have to show the offering circular and you have to show people access to it. So this is the landing page of our offering circular. It clearly shows we're going to raise up to 25 million at $1.10 per share up top. It talks about the proceeds and what we'll use it for. And then all within these 248 pages are audited financials, the use of funds, what the security offering, the compensation for myself and the other directors. You're putting it all out there right now. So again, this was the debate. It's like, whoa, do I really want to put this all out there for everyone to see? Well, you have to answer that question yourself. It was very easy for me because I really feel like I've always been putting it all out there. That the transparency and the integrity at Hammett to me was unassailable. And so we just had to put all this stuff into the format that the SEC wanted. And then another concern in-house, and some people said, well, wait a minute, you're going to show that you're profitable. You're going to show these amazing margins. Why do you want to show that? Like, maybe people they're not going to be happy about that. I'm like, I believe our fans want us to be profitable. They're great with us having solid margins because it's convinced them that we're a great brand to not only invest in, but to carry. We're going to be around the long haul. I don't think anybody stops carrying their Louis Vuitton and Gucci because they've got amazing margins. I think they carry it because they know it's going to be around for multiple generations. So this is our offering circular. It's a lot of pages, but yes, I did read ours and I read many prior to that to make sure that we could fit the bill. And there's a lot in there. So if you are going to go down.
This is right on your website. So if anybody really wants to take a look at what's involved, you can go to hammett.com and take a peek. Is there a reason why it has to be in certain chunks? Like, is that something you set? Is that
on that offering? That's a form. So everything, every company doing a Reg A or an IPO has a form that they need to fill in, and they fill it in. So that when you're reading multiple ones, you can jump around and find things in the same place, Karen. So it's actually not as hard as it looks. A lot of it is already there. You just got to fill in the blanks. And we've got great partners that helped us. A company called CrowdCheck they're the leader in the space for doing Reg A pluses, and I think Reg CFs. If you decide to work on one of those platforms, Start Engine, Republic, they have their own providers that'll get you there. It's really a question of, can you get the cash to get out of the gate? The nice part is, once you're out of the gate and you're raising, you actually can draw down on the capital every week. So the nice part is you can self-fund the rest of the raise by taking money down. So you're going to have to spend money on advertising. You can buy Google, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can do paid advertising to talk about your raise. You can fund that with proceeds as you go along, which is also quite unique versus traditional capital raising, where normally you're not able to take the money down until you hit the fundraising goal. So think about that also. I had a quote here for you, Karen. I listen a lot to a guy named Chamath. Chamath's the SPAC king. If you haven't heard of SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies out there. He made a lot of money. He's got a great podcast. And he was speaking on it just Thursday. He said, I think it's better that everybody be allowed to be an accredited investor. And he said, everybody should be able to buy the next LinkedIn or Uber. He was saying those quotes in reference, he didn't specifically say Reg A, but he was talking about it. He was basically talking about this closed group of qualified investors right now that have access to all these deals, and that how they should open it up to everybody. And I said to myself, I know why Chamath would say that. If you think about classic supply and demand curves, which dictate price, the more demand for anything, the increase in price. We have opened the floodgates to investors being able to invest into these private offerings, the next Uber, the next Lyft, the next Beyond Meat. It's already there for you. These 80 platforms will prove it, which means now once people discover it, the demand for these offerings, the demand to be part of these companies is going to naturally go up. And so will the supply. That's where you come in. If you want to add to the supply, start thinking about it now. Even if it's like, for me, 4 years from now, you're going to be ready, and the industry's just going to be stronger, and it's going to be more evolved, and absolutely it's going to be a force to be reckoned with. When a Chamath recognizes it and says, listen, let them come, it's time. The old rule, the reason qualified investors were brought out, they said, was to protect people so they don't lose all their money. But if you think about that, that's 70 years ago, 60 years ago, 50 years ago. Right now, there's a million ways for non-qualified investors to lose all their money. That is way unhealthier than investing in a quality startup that they have full visibility to their financials, to their offering. They have approval from the SEC. This is a bonanza for you and I. And as a matter of fact, I put my money where my mouth is. So I've already invested in 3 companies that are raising money through Reg A. And my goal is to do $100,000 a year over the next 2 years. For me, that's a lot of money. I don't have a lot of cash I've taken out of Hammett, but I've decided I'm going to learn over the next couple of years. So if one day I am managing my own capital, I want to be able to invest it smart versus having to go through a middleman, which is the more traditional route. So I'm a big believer in this process, and I hope you are too.
I love the ability to invest in brands and businesses that I love and I'm passionate about, and know where my money's going, that it's going to a high integrity company that shares values, and I think you could find them in these options.
There's a lot. I want to invest in a lot of them. Listen, you want to take a look at first the company, the product, then you want to look at their financials. And then obviously to get a return, you want to look at what are they pricing their offering at? Is there upside for me? So, and again, shameless plug for Hammett. We're hyper growth, we're profitable, and the pricing that we put on it is well below the lower end of the spectrum for Reg A offerings with plenty of upside. And I welcome you to invest even a minimum or 1,000 shares into Hammett and follow our journey. You get the reports, you get the annual statements, you'll be able to say, watch the show. And then when you see me, you get a big hug and you're like, Tony, I bought stock in Hammett. I love Hammett.
Well, I can't wait to see the show. All right, so we covered a lot of territory. Does anyone have any questions for Tony? We don't have that much more time. And I know Tony we've got you. So, you know, anyone wants to jump in, feel free. We also recorded this session. It will be on the Accessories Council website. If you go under events, we have a YouTube channel. In fact, all of our past events, most of our past events are recorded and kept there, which is just
Perfect. And an egg.
You'll be able to go back and take a look.
Great.
You got an egg?
Yes.
Perfect.
Oh, okay.
All right. Are we good? No questions? We're good. I don't mind. If you do have follow-ups, I told Karen, I'm TONY@HAMMITT.com, Tony@Hammett.com. If you want to see the offering, it's invest.Hammett, HAMMITT.com. And that shows our full offering. And again, if you want to take a look at the link for the sizzle, it's just goingpublic.com, GOINGPUBLIC.com. There's a nice sizzle there for Hammett. There's another one for the show. And I think you're going to enjoy it. I mean, it's education, finance, drama, entrepreneurialism, and investing all in one. It's going to be great. So Karen, this is fun.
Thank you so much for being generous with your time, open with your information, you know, it really, in sharing your journey. So to learn a little more about the journey, more about the Hammett brand, which, you know, we barely got to talk about why it's so cool. Read our magazine, the Accessories, the next issue Accessories magazine will be out later today. Check your emails. I promise by like 4 o'clock today, it'll be live. So
Karen, one more shameless plug. If you just want to follow the journey without investing, go to that investment link, put your email in. You're going to get 5 emails telling the Hammett story. Go to school on them. This is how you should tell your story. They're broken down one at a time. There's so much we've already done, which could ease your path, not just for capital raising, but also to add wholesale partners. I highly recommend minimum doing that so that you can see all the work that we've done to get to this point and set some standards for yourself to get there too. You can do this. This is one day at a time work. This is not big bang. This is incremental success over many years. So make a commitment to yourself to go to school, not just on Reg A, but on Hammett, and see what we've done to get to this place, because you'll be here too. Listen, have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Thanks, Tony.
Bye. Bye, Karen. See ya. By the way, this is